Are you in the Hangout toolbox?
Yes.
Okay, so you have the lower third. You can write your name. It's the first tab.
Okay. Lower third, there is my name already.
Yeah.
Should I add something?
Maybe your description, what you do, like
On
co-founder,
top.
Feedly co-founder,
Okay.
or your Twitter, something.
Oh, custom overlay, save preset. Interesting. Save. Please enable lower third or custom overlay before saving. Okay.
Yes, now it's good. I can
It's
see
good?
it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool.
See, there's your picture.
Nice. That's really awesome. Okay. And it's not
Okay, so
backwards? Because for
it's,
me it's backwards.
huh?
Is it backwards? Like,
No, no, it's fine.
okay.
So yeah, I'm recording right now. It's not live, so doesn't matter
Okay.
if you will say something wrong or something like that.
Okay.
So let me just make some introduction here.
Yeah.
Um, Today we're talking. Oh, how do I say your second name? It's Bodolec.
Yeah.
Bodolec, right? Okay, so today we are talking to Arthur Bodolec. He's the co-founder of Feedly, a newsread application, and the creator of UX Archive. So, hi Arthur, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, you recently posted on Medium an article with your thoughts on the Google Material Design and how Feedly is reacting to it. So, let's talk about material design. How Feedly is reacting to those new principles and guidelines.
Right. So I think for us, it's very interesting to see companies like Google having these kind of guidelines because I think the main advantage is that it helps user better navigate across different apps. Because when you think about it, like people have a smartphone with a lot of different apps, and everyone is trying to do their interesting user interface. But having someone at Google kind of like set some major guidelines, I think is very helpful for people to not relearn all the user experience on every different apps. So it brings some consistency. And also from a designer like me who is designing one app, it's great to have some super specific guidelines for things that you don't really have to rethink, like a menu. You don't really want to get too creative with menus because that's not what so yeah, it's just great to have like these guidelines which you can just follow, which is easier for us as designers and easier for users. So for us, it's good.
Yeah, I saw that you went to a boot camp on Google
Yeah,
for material design.
yeah.
So, what are the most relevant principles in material design, in your opinion?
So I think one of the most interesting ones is the one that talked about the fact that everything is supposed to be a piece of paper and it's just like a few stacks that are kind of moving around. I
Hmm.
think this one is one of the most important ones from Google's perspective, and also a super good one for users. Because before Android used to be, they used to have like fades out and things like that, and you would get lost pretty easily because you didn't know where things would go. And I think with this principle, it's pretty awesome because you see things sliding in and moving around, and you perfectly understand, what's going on your screen. So I think that's very good. And then they are like working on transitions as well. So everything just helps the user really understand like where elements go and how things work. So I think that's very good. I think they call it tangible interfaces.
Uh-huh. And I saw there's a principle on color, right? Color branding, how to apply those colors on your app.
Yeah.
And I saw what you did with Feedly. You actually didn't put the Feedly main color, which is green, right? On
Uh-huh.
the menu bar, you choose to put gray. Can
Yeah.
you tell us why you didn't follow exactly those principles?
Right. So I think for Feedly, so there's different types of apps out there. So Feedly is a reading app, so people spend, about 30 minutes on their mobile phone every day reading content. And so the thinking is, if you're really focusing on content, having like a bright green area at the top is super distracting and it's going to make your eye really tired. So that's why we chose not to follow this one. I think it works great for other apps. Like, let's say if you would think about Yelp or something like this, where you just open your phone, find something quick and leave. That makes sense. But for someone who is spending, 30 minutes reading, having this bright green at the top wouldn't work too well. So that's why we decided not to follow this one.
I'm asking this because I love the Google Material Design, but I think that maybe I can see why Google did that because all the apps on the Play Store, they don't have consistency, like design
Yeah.
consistency. I think most of them are designed by developers. So I think what Google did was to create these guidelines so developers can follow those design principles, which they didn't know about. But my question is, do you think that maybe from here now on we're gonna have a lot of apps looking almost the same because they are all following the same principles and guidelines and color principles, all those stuff?
Yeah, so it's funny because there's a lot of people who ask this question, and I went to another design workshop at Google the other day, and some people asked the same thing. I really don't see this coming because, as even Google says, like these are guidelines, and then you get to choose what you want to follow and what you don't want to follow. So I think it's like your job as a designer to kind of see which guidelines are going to be useful to you and which ones you should tweak to make your app like really personal. So for instance, there was this other team working for another great product at this workshop, and they have a font that's very unique to their brand. So they decided to only use that font, and they have like super bold, like big numbers with this font, which then when you open their app, you really feel like it's their app with their branding while still following some of the Google guidelines. So I think it's just a matter of being a little bit clever about what you want to follow and what really makes your brands stand out and use these. And so, yeah, so I think it's just a matter of like finding out what you want to, where you want to create some like brand value and where you want to just follow the Google guidelines. And also like, I think the great thing about this is that as I said, like for like the menus or some of the common things, you really don't have to think about it. And then you can really focus on the one experience that's super unique to you and really have your custom design. So yeah.
So I use Feedly on iOS. I haven't seen on Android, but is Feedly on Android already using material design, or you are testing?
So that's going to come in our next release. So basically, I did, as you've seen on the blog post, I did like a kind of a design exercise, redesign for material design. So that was to have an idea of what Feedly would look like if we would go full material design. And then we took some of these new designs and put it into our new Android app. And so I think in a few weeks, maybe next week, we're going to release our new Android app with some of these changes. So not all of them, but a bunch of them. And yeah, the idea is to add, to go more towards that direction for Android in the coming releases.
Oh, great. So now let's talk about Feedly. How it started? How did you come out with this awesome idea?
So the one who actually got the idea his name is Edwin. He's the CEO of Feedly. And he started working on the project in 2008. He had some spare time and he was reading a ton of blogs on the web. And so at that time, there was no way to follow all these blogs in one place in a pretty visual way. So he started building Feedly just for himself. And then he published that on the web and a lot of people got interested. So that's how it got started. And then he started with a few colleagues from his previous company. And then a few years later, I joined as like the design co-founder to be in charge of the design. And yeah, since then it's been growing on desktop and on mobile. Yeah.
So you are an interface designer.
Yeah, well, I'm the only designer, so I do
Oh, okay.
anything related to design at Feedly. I do it.
And how are the teams arranged? Like, do you have UX team, UX designer, developer?
Right. So so again, I'm the only designer, so I would do everything from, user research, prototyping, sketch, I mean, really anything that's related to design. And then I work closely with one developer,
Hmm.
actually two developers who implement my designs. So usually I would just do my designs, show the team, iterate a bunch of times, and then once I'm ready, I can just give this design to my front-end developer and he would just implement it. And then we have a bunch of other developers who do more back-end stuff, but I don't really have to interact with them too much.
So it's a small team, right? It's not
Yeah, it's
like,
10 people.
yeah. And how do you search for UX implements? Do you do user research?
Yeah, so usually it's an alignment between uh, things that we hear. So we spend a lot of time on Twitter, listening to what people say, on customer support as well. And we are trying to listen to, people's problems. So that's one side. And then on the other side, there's like the business goals. So it's
Hmm.
more about like what do we want to achieve in the few months or years as a company. And then we try to see if there is some interesting overlaps between what people want and what we want as a company. And then once we get a better idea of that goal, then I do user research. So I spend a lot of time talking to users to see, what they want, what's their use case. And then usually what I do is I build super quick prototypes, really simple, not really nice. Then I would Skype them, show them my prototypes, see if we would solve their problem, and then take it from there. And then, yeah, so it's a lot of iterations. And then once I get a good design, I finalize it and send it to the developer.
Which tools do you use to create those prototypes?
Oh yeah, so I actually want to write a blog post about this, but there's mainly three tools I use. So the first one is Sketch. So I
Sketch.
use yeah, up until last December, I was using Illustrator and Photoshop,
Uh-huh.
but I tried Sketch. Here in Silicon Valley, everyone is using Sketch, and so I decided to try, and it's super awesome. You can build things really quickly. It's never slow. It's always fast, even though I use big images all the time. So that's great. And the other great thing is there's a big community around it. So a lot of people are creating add-ons and things to help you work faster. So
Hmm.
that's one I'm using. The next one is Flinto. So
Flinto,
basically,
yeah, I know.
yeah, so I can build quick prototypes as well. It's not really advanced, but in 5 minutes you get your prototype. So that's really cool. And the last one I'm using, it's still in beta, but I got an access to it. It's called Zeppelin.
Oh, I
Z
haven't heard about this one.
Yeah, so you should check it out. It's Zeplin,
Okay.
Zeppelin. And the awesome thing it does is, so you connect this to your sketch, then you take your final file, you export it to Zeppelin, you can invite your developer, and then basically he's going to be able to click on every element of your design and then get all the spec.
Oh, I
So he clicks
see.
on a button and it says, this is the gradient, this is the border,
Is this
this is the
a
distance from the side.
is this an online tool, a browser tool that you do on the browser? You
Mm,
have to download.
no, it's something you have to download,
Oh, okay.
but it syncs over the web. So anytime you're gonna change your design, it's gonna change the file on your developer's uh, laptop as well. And yeah, basically you click on anything and it tells you the distance between other objects, tells
Uh-huh.
you the color, the font, everything. You can add comments as well. So the good thing is I used to spend hours like, doing the blueprint, saying like, oh, this is font, 12 pixels, this color,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. And in this case, I'm not doing this anymore. So just send the file and then he can do whatever he wants.
Oh, that's a
This
great
one is,
tool.
that's the best. It saves
Yes.
hours of work. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome to know about that. I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, check it out.
Do you when you do those prototypes, do you do some kind of A/B test or something just to make sure, just validate something?
We rarely do A/B test, but we have a beta channel. So sometimes what we will do is we will build something. I would first, again, like spend a lot of time with users before launching anything just to see if they understand it. And then what we do is we launch the feature just to a few users to see how they react. And if we see it works better than the previous one, then we would kind of move from this. And we've done a few A/B testing, but not too many.
Okay, so those feedbacks are more on the social media, right? You see what people are saying about Feedly, or do you do some analytics, like Google Analytics?
Yeah, so usually it's before launching, we would do, so usually on Skype. So I would Skype people and talk to them about the issues. I also use something called usertesting.com, where you can have people who don't use your site to try out the feature, which is very good. And then once it's launched, then we look at the metrics. But to be honest, we are a bit less into metrics, but more into really understanding what people understand and how we can make things better, rather than looking at too many metrics.
That's very interesting because I think most of the UX designers are more focused on the metrics, and having that kind of connection with people, like Skyping them, talking to them directly on Facebook or something, I think that's a very positive way to receive those feedbacks.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's one thing to know that something doesn't work, but then you don't know why. So you can imagine why, but then most of the time you can be wrong. And so like I feel like talking with people, you can ask, oh, but why is this not working? Or why do you think this is not helpful? And then they explain to you the exact reason. And that's more helpful to redesign it, because then you know exactly why something wasn't working for them, which is more insightful than just a number that tells you this is not working. Then you have no idea if it's because the design is not well done, or if the copy is not good, people don't understand it, or it could be anything really.
I think I kind of see Feedly as a startup, right? Like the work model.
Oh, sorry, can you repeat it? It cut out.
Oh, I think Feedly is the work model, the methodology is more like a startup,
Yeah.
So how do you have like a small team, and do you have this agile methodology to work?
Yeah, so obviously it's small team because we're only 10, and usually like designing new products, there's basically the CEO and myself. And then sometimes some other people would help too. Like we have someone in charge of Feedly Pro, so he would like kind of do the same job as me, not the design, but like talk to a lot of users to kind of understand what they want. So there's just a few people working on this, and then I don't know if you call it agile, but we iterate a lot. So we would come up with something, prototype quickly, test it, and then iterate again. So yeah, we like iterate constantly, basically.
Do you spend a lot of time doing like personas and those kind of deliverables?
Yeah, so I did this.
Do you think this is important? Like my goal, what I'm trying to ask is, because I think this is going to be this interview is focused on UX designers, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of UX designers spend too much time creating personas and scenarios, and I think maybe they should go straight to the point, that is design and test it. So
Yeah,
how do you see this? Do you think it's important to spend a lot of time doing those kind of material?
I think it's a little bit of both, because on one side, I mean, I'm just working for one product, so the persona is not really changing it all the time. So I think if you work in a small startup, it's good to do it once at least to really understand why people are using your product and what's their context. And then you can have your 1 or 2 or 3 max personas on the wall and always have them in mind. And then, as you said, I think you should be quick at like prototyping things. But I still think it's interesting to have these, because then for us it's easier to understand who we are building a new feature for if you already have this personalized in mind. So I guess if you're in an agency, you need to do it for like every project. But if you're in a startup, you can just do it once, and and go from there and just then iterate quickly.
And how do you decide what features are going to be paid and what features are going to be available to the public
Right.
on
So
Feedly?
yeah, yeah.
As a
So
product
basically,
designer, how do you decide those
right.
things?
So it actually almost comes back to the question of persona. Basically, there's a certain type of people who use Feedly Pro, and these people are the people that are more advanced. They use, like features that not everyone uses, and I think that's why it's called Feedly Pro. Usually, it's like professionals who, use Feedly for professional reasons, and they need to connect Feedly with some other more advanced services. And these people are pretty rare. It's not a lot of people in Feedly. So and basically we try to talk to these people and say, okay, what are the other things more advanced that they are looking for? And then when we see that there's a new feature that, not everyone would use, but it would be super useful to some like professionals, then that's when we add it to Feedly Pro. If it's something that's more mainstream,
Okay.
then we would put it to everyone. And so that's why basically on Feedly Pro you have two things. One is you can search within your Feedly, and that's pretty advanced. Like not everyone is interested in searching articles inside their Feedly. And the other one is we connect to like Evernote, Dropbox, and things like that. And again, this is like pretty advanced. So these are the kind of things we would add to Feedly Pro.
Nice. Feedly has a lot of integration with other apps such as Evernote and Dropbox. How this partnership started?
So usually it all comes from users. So if we have a ton of people saying like, oh, we use Evernote, it would be awesome if we could send articles from Feedly to Evernote, then we look at if there's a free API we can use and just build it ourselves. Or sometimes we just, send an email to that company and say, hey, we'd like to integrate with your product. Can you help us? So usually it's a little bit of both. Like we can start implementing ourselves and then talk to these guys if needed. But yeah, usually we just wait for a lot of people to ask for something, and then if a lot of people want it, then we just build it.
Oh, okay. So, talking about business, if you can say something about this, how do you see the future of Feedly?
Right. So I think in the longer term, what we want to do is we want to be a platform that's kind of that's like in between people who are interested in reading content and publishers. And so we really want to help publishers, get better distribution with Feedly, get better monetization with Feedly, get better branding, so that they can like not just survive but really like grow. And on the other side, we want to make sure that people come to Feedly to find the best content they want. And I think the type of people, to come back to the persona thing, the type of people we are interested in is the professionals. So people who really need to get that content to get better at what they do. And so I
Yeah.
think, Feedly is going to evolve in this path, which is going to be a platform that's right in between publishers and the readers. So yeah, I think that's where we see the future of Feedly.
And talking more about your work, what's the biggest challenge for you?
Yeah, so I think when you look at Feedly and user experience, the hardest challenge really, which is actually for a ton of products, is the onboarding and the discovery. So coming onto Feedly for the first time and helping people discover the best sources they have to follow to get great content. That's like the most challenging part, and we haven't found the magic recipe yet. So we are spending a lot of time trying to understand how that could better work and building new products for this.
Do you have something that you can share with us, like something you've learned from all those tests, from I'm talking about user behavior, something that
Right.
most of the users don't do this or don't do that, something interesting.
So something very interesting I learned, I think 1 or 2 years ago, is so sometimes you like it's actually an interesting discussion with like analytics versus doing like user research. So sometimes what happens is let's say you are doing your iPhone app or your Android app, and
Okay.
you have an onboarding, and let's say the way you explain your product is not with the right words, and people are slightly confused or they get a wrong idea about your product, if you do that, then these people are going to be completely lost in the app. But it doesn't mean that the design is bad. So sometimes it's just the copy makes them a
Uh-huh.
bit confused at first, and then they get completely lost. And what's interesting is if you would look at the analytics, you would see that people maybe don't click on the right things or they don't get engaged, and so you think, oh, that's because the design is bad. But then when you zoom in and you actually like do some tests, you see it's just that they get really confused at first with the way you explain your product, and maybe your design is actually really good.
That's
So that's
very
something that's very
interesting.
interesting. Like
Yeah.
if they get lost with one small thing, then it screws up everything else. You know?
Yeah.
So
Sometimes you think it's the design, but it's just a copy.
yeah, and I think we underestimate copy. It's so when I joined Feedly, there was like a few developers already, and they thought that if you want to see big change, you need to like implement crazy big features. But sometimes it's just that the copy is not really clear. Doesn't really make sense to people because they don't use the exact same word. And then just changing that is going to have a huge impact. So sometimes from an engineering perspective, it's really small changes that can have big impact. But that you cannot see on analytics. You really need to spend some time with users.
Yeah, that's very nice to know. So, what's your advice for people when they are starting to design a product? What would you say to those designers and UX designers?
So I think the one thing I would really say is just to spend some time with users. So I think it's a combination of building prototype quickly and then spending time with users uh, right away. So that you don't like imagine your product too much, uh, and then you launch it and no one understands it. So it's just like spend some time, build something quickly, show it and get feedback, and do that like super quickly every day.
Uh-huh. And since Feedly is a newsread app, what blogs or websites do you suggest?
So okay, let me see,
You
because I
probably read
don't.
a lot of blogs.
I'm actually trying to read less, to be honest, because I think that's one of the issues sometimes with Feedly. It's because you can like follow so many blogs, then you get a little bit overwhelmed. So these days, I'm actually trying not to read too much about UX, but just trying to get inspired with like other things. So there's one site that I love. It's called Fubiz, Fubiz
Uh-huh.
dot
Yeah.
net. Yeah, it's awesome because it's just a lot of creative stuff. So this one I really, really love. So that's the one regarding design, which I like. Um, and then, yeah, on design, I read, UX Magazine is pretty cool. Um, Actually, you know what? If you want to share with people, they can go on feedly.com/abrodo. So
Okay.
ABRODO. That's my, Twitter name. So if they go on feedly.com/abrodo, everyone can see what I read. So there
Okay.
is my Feedly collections and all the websites I read, so people can come onto that page and kind of check out what I read. So that's one of the features that we are releasing slowly to let people share what they read, because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's important. It's nice to be talking to you because as a UX designer, we read so much uh, good practices, and we try to apply those good practices,
Hmm.
and we try to apply what we read through our projects. And talking to you, I realized that the most important thing isn't the UX design isn't to learn about UX design, but to learn about the user. You know what I'm saying? It's not about
Exactly.
me reading blogs and books and try to apply those stuff on your project. You have to focus on your
Yeah,
user.
exactly. I think, like at first it's good to like learn a lot of things about UX because obviously you want to get the skills.
Sure, sure.
Then you want to learn the tools. Like for instance, I started with Sketch, so I'm reading a lot about, how to do things quickly with Sketch. But then once you know that, as you said, like you just really need to understand what you're trying to do, and then where your users are coming from and their world, because that's the thing that you need to constantly learn about to get a better product. Because UX design is evolving a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of UX designers that are totally by the book, you know. Everything that they
Yeah,
say is like, oh, I read, you have to do like this. So they do exactly how it's written on the book.
right.
So yeah, that's a big thing to say to people. Focus on the
Exactly.
user, more on the
Exactly.
user.
Yeah.
So is there any message you want to leave?
Um, I have one message for students.
Nice.
Yeah, so because basically, like, I think it's really hard when you study and you kind of imagine what it is to be a professional and finding a job. It's not easy, and you don't really know how to deal with this. So I really like to share some tips to students looking for jobs. And I think the most important tip I can share, especially for designers interested in UX, is to have a portfolio online, whether it's on Dribble or Behance or their own website, that look very professional. And that also means that the UI needs to look really good, because I think sometimes as UX designers we make the mistake of like, oh, but like I'm not really into UI, it's more like the user experience, so it's okay if my design doesn't look too good.
Hmm.
And it's actually not really true. Like when we look for new designers, we first start by looking at the UI anyway. So yeah, I think just this message of, okay, if you're looking for a job, make sure you have some good UI, because people are going to look at that first, and then you're going to get to explain your user experience. But yeah, just like focus on having something that looks really professional, really beautiful, and then you'll get to talk to people, and then you'll be able to explain your user experience.
Yeah, here in Brazil, I think most of the places, but when we talk about a UX designer, we have
Hmm.
we have this person that comes or from information architecture or
Uh-huh.
from interface design. So what I'm trying to say is that today I think most of the UX designers they are or yeah, user interface designers or information architectures.
Right.
So how do you see in France or the United States the hunting for UX designers? Do you think that companies they try to find more UX designers that are also interface designers that can
Yeah.
create some design? Do you think how do you
So
see this?
yeah, most companies they're kind of interested in UX designers who are really good in UI too.
Hmm.
So I work in a small company and I'm the only designer, so that's kind of different. But my friends who work at Google or Facebook or Lyft or all these companies,
Hmm.
usually like everyone does a little bit of everything. So you're gonna get most like UX design, but then you get to do the UI too. Like no one is really gonna do the UI for you. But then what happens is like some people have different strengths. So some designers are a little bit better in user research. Some designers are a little bit better with UI. Um, so then you can ask your colleague to kind of help you on the UI if you're not as good. But usually everyone is going to do a little bit of everything. But for instance, for me, I'm a little bit better in user experience, and I'm looking right now for someone who is better than me on UI and on branding and visual design. That's super hard to find.
Yeah, okay, that's a message. If someone else is trying to get a job, maybe they can
Exactly.
send the portfolio.
Exactly. I'm looking for like a senior visual designer who is really good in like branding and typography, and who wants to like grow the design team with me. So yeah,
Hmm.
if someone is interested, you can send me an email to design@feedly.com.
Nice. Just one last question. How do you see the exchange of professionals? I think today the companies are more flexible to hire people from abroad. And
Yeah, definitely.
how do you think this is working today nowadays? You know?
Well, I don't know for everywhere in the world, but at least in Silicon Valley, designers are really valued. So everyone is looking for good designers. And there's a lot of designers out there, but not that many very good ones. And there is not enough here. So every company is hiring abroad for sure. So the priority is to find like the best designers, and Silicon Valley is not enough. So people are looking abroad and trying to like find this talent anywhere they are and bring them here. And what I also see is that it doesn't really matter. Experience doesn't really matter. Like the best designers I see, honestly, are super young. Some people are like 19, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like better than people who have 10 years experience in design. So like that's another message to young people. Like if you have work that looks super professional, you're gonna get jobs that someone who has like 10 years experience is not even gonna get. So there's like, yeah, that's the good thing with design. If you're good, you're gonna find a good job for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of have been said about having to have a degree or something like that, but I really
Yeah.
don't think this matters. Do you think this
No,
it's a big issue?
no. When I'm looking at portfolios, I don't even look at where people studied, to be honest. Like
Oh,
you look at the portfolio and you know right away if the person is super good. And then obviously you need to talk through that process and things like that, but just looking at the portfolio is really what matters. And I think the experience matters too. So if you're like a student, it's very important that you do even like fake projects, but like you can redesign an app or like create your own fake app, but do some work that look like it's been done for a client, so that we can see that you're like you can do some good designs.
mhm.
I think that matters more than I've been to this school, because that really doesn't say anything. Again, like some people have 10 years experience, they have worked for tons of companies, but their design is really not that good. And other people, like students, they've done just one or two very good projects, and that shows how good they are, and that's enough. So
Yeah, can you just to finish our interview? I know it's kind of too long, but I don't know
that's
if
okay.
you're busy right now. You have to leave. But can you tell just a little bit about your how did you start on design, your
Oh yeah.
background as a student? How?
Okay. So just in case if we get cut off, it's because I have almost no more battery. But
Oh, okay,
apparently I
okay,
have 8 minutes, so let's do this.
okay.
Yeah, I might just go away. Um, so I studied industrial design. So it's uh, and then so that's what I studied, and then I got this specialty into interaction design, which was not web design. It was more like what if objects become intelligent. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about like artificial intelligence and interfaces on any object and things like that, Internet of Things. So I like specialized in this. And then after that, I worked in a company called Experiencia in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
which had a lot of clients like
Do you
Samsung.
speak
And
do you speak Italian?
I don't speak Italian. I speak
Um,
like un poco.
un poco. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like a small international company in Torino, in Italy.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, so there I've done more projects. First, I learned about user research and ethnography, and I didn't know about this. I was like, oh, it's very interesting. And then I learned more about the web and building interfaces and things like that. And after that, I went back to Paris. I was a consultant and a coach for a bunch of small startups that were just getting started. And then at that time, that's when I met with the Feedly CEO, and that's when I joined. It was like, okay, you should, come and be in charge of design.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice story. That's a nice background. So you basically started as a UX researcher and then
No, I
you,
didn't. I didn't do UX research. I was in a team doing some concepts
uh-huh.
for clients, and there were some user researcher working with me, and that's why I learned about this. But I was not doing it myself.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, I want to thank you for giving this interview.
Oh,
I
thanks.
know
Thank you.
you're a very busy person, so that's nice to have you here.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous at the beginning because this is my first English interview, so it's kind
Oh, you're
of
good.
nervous.
You're perfect. And I think it's good that you have the questions in advance. You send the questions the day before, then you can read through. That way, like, you don't have to think too much.
Yeah,
And I think you're perfect. So good job.
yeah. Thank you so much. You was very kind to reply me and accepting to do this interview. It was really nice. Uh,
Cool. No
I
problem.
just have two questions. Do you have some kind of video? It can be on YouTube or Vimeo, so I can mix with the image while you're speaking. Because when I'm editing the video, while you're speaking,
Uh,
I can insert some like fiddly video, you know?
yes, we don't really have too many. I can send you one. Remind me there is
Yeah.
one,
Okay.
but it's not, you'll see. I'll send it to you, tell me what you think, but there is a little bit of, there's some things. And I can
Okay.
send you the original one if you want to integrate that into it. Yeah, maybe it's enough actually. There's a little bit of mobile, a little bit of desktop. There's someone using. Maybe it's fine actually. Okay.
Yeah.
Remind me and I'll send me an email. I'll send it to you.
Do you have some video like on the office, people working, those things? No?
That I don't have.
Okay. But the first one is great.
Okay.
The interface. And another question, do you have, you said you have like friends on Google, Facebook, and other companies. Do you have some UX designer or designer that
Oh
you
yeah, let me
can
ask.
indicate so
Yeah,
I can,
let me think about it and I'll ask. And
okay.
if they want to do it, I'll send you the contact.
Okay, great.
Cool.
So I'll wait for the video and then when I upload the interview, I send you the link.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. It was really
Thank
nice to
you.
talk to you.
Same here. Bye bye.
Bye.